Imagine this for a moment. You've just stopped responding to someone who has been manipulating you, not for days, but for months, maybe even years. Within hours, your phone lights up with messages, missed calls, and emotional pleas. They even show up unannounced at your doorstep. But here's what Carl Jung revealed that most people never realize. Their panic has nothing to do with losing you. It's something far more terrifying to them. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why your silence is the one thing they can't handle, and why it's their ultimate weakness. But first, let me tell you about Sarah. She was in a relationship that started with charm, affection, and the illusion of emotional safety. But as time passed, she noticed a shift. Every conversation revolved around them. Every emotion she shared was twisted, dismissed, or weaponized. What Sarah didn't know at the time was that she had become the target of what Carl Jung called a shadow projection. Then one day, Sarah made a radical decision. She went completely silent. No arguing, no explaining, no responding. Just silence. And what followed next would have fascinated Jung himself. The person who once seemed so composed and dominant suddenly turned desperate, unstable, and almost childlike in their behavior. Why does silence trigger such an intense reaction from someone like this? The answer lies in a deeper layer of the human psyche, something Jung uncovered in his groundbreaking work. According to Jung, every human being carries within them a shadow, the hidden, disowned parts of the self we try to avoid. But narcissists are different. Jung believed they don't just carry a shadow. They live as the shadow, pretending to be light while avoiding their true inner world at all costs. And here's where silence becomes lethal, because silence removes their mirror. Jung explained that narcissists survive psychologically by projecting their inner emptiness onto others. They need people to serve as what he called psychological containers, mirrors to reflect back their false sense of identity. Every time you react, you're feeding this system. Every argument, every emotional outburst you respond to keeps their constructed self alive. But when you go silent, that entire system collapses. What happens next is something Jung called narcissistic decompensation, a psychological breakdown that occurs when they can no longer maintain the illusion of control. Narcissists operate on what Jung described as external validation loops. Their sense of identity isn't rooted in authenticity. It's built entirely on your reactions. Your anger proves they matter. Your tears confirm their power. Your attention becomes their lifeline. Jung believed this creates a one-sided psychological symbiosis. The narcissist feeds on your energy, while you slowly lose touch with your own. But here's what's most shocking. Jung discovered that narcissists fear silence even more than hatred. Why? Because silence forces them to confront what Jung called the void, the empty space where their authentic self should exist. Without your reactions, they are left alone with themselves, and that is their greatest fear. If your silence continues, Jung explained, it leads to a total collapse of their false self. They begin to experience what he termed psychological disintegration. Their carefully crafted identity begins to crumble. Not just discomfort, existential terror. This is what Jung referred to as the fear of non-existence, not physical death, but the death of the only self they've ever known, the false one. And it doesn't stop there. Jung went further, explaining that narcissists often build what he called false self-structures to protect themselves from early emotional wounds. These structures are fragile, constantly needing outside reinforcement. So when you withhold your energy, your validation, even your conflict, you're not just walking away. You're dismantling the very scaffolding of their psychological survival. But Jung didn't stop at describing the collapse. He identified distinct phases that narcissists go through when faced with silence, what he called the stages of narcissistic breakdown. Understanding these stages gives you powerful insight into what's actually happening beneath their behavior. Stage 1, confusion and testing. According to Jung, this begins almost immediately. The narcissist can't understand why their usual manipulation isn't working. So they start testing, sending texts, making calls, trying kindness, then guilt, then rage. Jung called this psychological flailing, desperate, unconscious attempts to restore the narcissistic supply. It's not strategy, it's survival instinct. Stage 2, escalation and rage. When the testing fails, rage follows. But this isn't ordinary anger. Jung believed narcissistic rage stems from a profound existential fear. You, the mirror, have disappeared, and they can't stand what's left. This is when they lash out, show up uninvited, or make wild, dramatic moves. Jung described this as shadow projection, They accuse you of being the one who's unstable, hurtful, or cruel while avoiding their own inner terror. Stage 3. Manipulation through others. When direct contact fails, narcissists begin to activate what Jung described as their psychological web. They pull in others, mutual friends, family members, even children, to deliver messages, play the victim, or guilt you into responding. Jung noted that narcissists have an uncanny ability to exploit the emotions of others without even realizing they're doing it. It's what he called unconscious emotional manipulation. Stage 4. Collapse. If your silence holds, the final stage begins. Jung called this narcissistic decompensation. Their false self begins to disintegrate. They may fall into depression, somatic illness, or even regress emotionally, behaving like wounded children. And beneath all the grandiosity, Jung saw what most miss: a fragile human being who never learned to survive without external validation. But this collapse doesn't have to be the end. Jung believed that intense psychological breakdowns can become turning points, what he called the beginning of individuation. This is the process of becoming whole, of confronting and integrating the shadow self. But here's the hard truth Jung warned us about. Most narcissists won't choose this path. Instead, they return to what Jung called shadow reinforcement. They seek new mirrors, new victims, new sources of supply. That's why understanding this process is so crucial. It helps you recognize the difference between real transformation and just another cycle of manipulation. Jung taught that silence is not passive. It's what he called conscious non-participation. You're not ignoring them to punish them. You're choosing to disengage from a psychological system that was never built to support your well-being. And in doing so, something extraordinary happens. You begin your own process of individuation. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you're strengthening what Jung called the authentic self. The self that doesn't need validation to feel worthy. This, Jung believed, is the foundation of psychological maturity. Your silence breaks not just the cycle with that person, it can break generational patterns of dysfunction. Jung said families, relationships, even entire societies can become trapped in cycles of projection and manipulation. But when one person refuses to play the role anymore, the entire system shifts. You stop passing down the pain. And here's what silence ultimately becomes. It's not just a boundary. It's an act of self-liberation. As you step into your authentic self, you may begin to feel what Jung called individuation guilt, the discomfort that arises when you stop being who others want you to be. But Jung said this guilt is a sign you're on the right path. It means you're breaking free from societal conditioning that tells you to sacrifice your truth for approval. Jung encouraged what he called compassionate detachment. Care for others, yes, but not at the expense of yourself. True healing, he said, begins when you stop enabling someone's dysfunction in the name of love. There are also key signs Jung outlined that let you know your silence is working. Sign 1, escalating desperation. This means their tactics are failing and your boundary is holding. Sign 2, triangulation attempts. They're involving others because direct manipulation no longer works. This is proof your silence has power. Sign 3, sudden love bombing. A return to the charming version of themselves. Jung warned that this is often the most dangerous phase. It feels like healing, but it's often just recycling the cycle. But there's one sign that matters most: authentic emotional expression. If a narcissist ever shows real remorse, acknowledging their harm without blaming you, without expecting a reward, Jung said that's a rare sign of growth. True remorse is followed by corrective action, therapy, accountability, and change that doesn't depend on your forgiveness. Even then, Jung reminded us, you're never obligated to return. Some relationships are meant to break you open, not stay. Jung called them individuation catalysts. They're not supposed to last. They're supposed to wake you up. And how do you know whether to reconnect or move on? Jung said, trust your intuition. After manipulation, your inner compass may feel broken, but silence helps you hear what Jung called your authentic voice, the voice that knows what's right for you. He called this process building inner authority, the ability to make decisions from your own wisdom instead of fear or guilt. This takes time. It starts with small acts, trusting your instincts, honoring your feelings, saying no even when it's hard. And Jung offered practices to help. Active imagination, journaling, meditating, creating ways to connect with your inner self. Shadow work, facing your own wounds so they can't be used against you. Dream work, paying attention to the inner messages you've been taught to ignore. But the most important, Jung said it's the ability to tolerate discomfort without abandoning yourself, what he called conscious suffering. Sitting with loneliness, uncertainty, and guilt without running back to old patterns. Because when you can do that, you are truly free. Jung discovered something remarkable. When one person in a family system begins to individuate, everyone feels it. Your boundaries will expose other manipulative dynamics. People will react, but healthy people support your growth. Unhealthy ones resist it. Your silence becomes a test and a torch. Jung believed that by breaking free, you're not just changing your own life. You're transforming the psychological legacy you leave behind. You become a wounded healer, someone who's been through the fire, and come out with wisdom. But he also cautioned, stay vigilant. Narcissists often reappear just when you're most vulnerable. They have an uncanny sense of timing. That's why Jung said the key is conscious living. Stay connected to your truth, your boundaries, your inner voice. Because here's what makes it all worth it. Jung said that those who go through this process, who choose authenticity over manipulation, truth over performance, experience something rare, genuine aliveness. Not the highs and lows of toxic drama, but deep, grounded, soul-level peace. You see manipulation coming. You trust yourself. You create relationships rooted in truth. And one final insight from Jung ties it all together. Every psychological crisis is also a spiritual invitation. You didn't attract this relationship because you were weak. You attracted it because something deep within you knew you were ready to wake up, to heal, to grow, and to lead others by example. Your silence isn't punishment. It's power. It's protection. And it's the beginning of everything you were always meant to be. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Your silence claims that privilege, not just for yourself, but for every soul still trapped in a role that doesn't fit them. You didn't go silent to destroy anyone. You went silent to find yourself. And in doing so, you may have offered them the only chance they've ever had to find themselves too. That is the power of your silence. That is the wisdom of Carl Jung. And that is the miracle of choosing your authentic self, no matter the cost. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can leave a super thanks below. It truly means a lot and helps this message reach more people. Thank you for watching.